One thing that has always bothered me about Destiny is the mystery and agenda of the Awoken. They've always felt different from the other two portions of humanity, those that are, in fact, human, and of course our robot counterparts, the Exo. Both of them have always felt a bit easier to explain. One is the creation of human hands. One is humanity itself, unchanged but enhanced by light. The Awoken. Even the name showcases that there is a form past our own that we could reach naturally. Or is it all thanks to the light and dark meeting up once again? And how far back does this puzzle go? Perhaps that's what we can hope to answer with the Dreaming City. Then again, this almost feels like it could be the setup for a Guns N' Roses song. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and my oh my, Bungie, you do realize I have a lot of other topics to cover other than Forsaken, right? I mean, it's not even out yet. I've got Whisper of the Worm to cover, there's Osiris and his prophecies, there's a roadmap of Destiny 2 that you've stuck inside some old Grimoire cards, FWC has some new bits, we still have Comics Volume 2 and 3 to look over from Warmind. Yeah, you get the idea. I've got a full list, and between work and these little trailer drops, it's just been silly. So, I'm left with two choices. Do I let the Dreaming City go until it comes out with Forsaken, or do I start talking about it now? Well, that answer should be kind of obvious at this point. As I said in my opening monologue, the Dreaming City seems like the point that we're going to finally get answers to the Awoken as a race of humanity. We received some answers for the Exo throughout Warmind, which helped to fill in some gaps, and humanity has always just been humanity. Granted, the Ares 1 entries really did help in kind of knowing more about the narrative of what happened before the collapse. But the Awoken, they're still just such a mystery. As Petrovenge says within the new trailer that Bungie has shown off, the Dreaming City is the Awoken's most sacred place. It was meant as a last place for the Awoken to leave to after everything was safe, or at least so it seems. These are her words. For me, this translates to something more akin to Lord of the Rings, where the elves go back into the West by the end of Return of the King. This is their home, and quite possibly where they were born, at least in due part. There are still so many questions that need answers, of course. The reef seems to be a gate to keep the Dreaming City and the tangled shore mostly hidden away from us. We can see the reef hanging overhead throughout most of the outside shots that we see in the new trailers and really in several others. Most promotional shots showcase the reef in full, and it even led to a theory that the Fallen we've been fighting in Destiny 2, the supposed House of Dusk, is in league with the reef, thanks to the logo on their cloaks, along with their color schemes. Is it a mockery? A vengeance reminder? That's a story for another day in and of itself. The major question we need to ask ourselves is how this place even formed within our little solar system. This area, at the very least the Dreaming City, looks rather immense. Time will tell, of course, but this doesn't seem like a small point in space. As it is, it would be easy to spot if you knew exactly where to look, and that would even be with our own modern-age telescopes hanging in orbit around Earth as they are. So for surveillance equipment of the city age, how was this never looked into or spoken about before? It seems there's something missing here. Or perhaps the answer lies with the often relied upon group known as the Nine. I still have my doubts that the Trials of the Nine's wormhole or black hole is even there, which I've discussed at length, but this might put a nail in that theory for the sake of this area being more of a gateway to another realm entirely. The Nine may have been the ones to showcase this kind of power. If the Dreaming City can't be viewed from outside the reef's gateway to enter it, then is the reef housing some type of portal into another realm? It's not outside the realm of possibility, especially with how the Vex and Hive just portal jump around. Then again, with what we see of the Dreaming City as a whole, this makes a bit more sense. Remember, if you will, the tale of Crota and how he ripped open a tear within Oryx's throne world and suddenly the Vex popped out of it. As reference, the throne world and ascendant realm of the Hive are the same thing, so you may hear these phrases pop up in Forsaken once in a while, or at least I'm guessing. This occurred in the Books of Sorrow underneath cards 38 and 39, entitled The Partition of Death and Open Your Eye, Go Into It, respectively. This tale gives us a clue that the Vex and Hive throne world seem linked in some way. A Hive's throne world is granted to them by one of these worm gods, and now that we've seen Xol, we at least have a better understanding of what one of these things looks like. Granted, we're still not sure of its power entirely, or if each worm god has different powers altogether. Now, how about those Taken? As we've seen with Xol, he seemed to be able to retreat back into the realm that housed the Taken of Io. This is found in the new Whisper of the Worm sniper rifle entry. Whether this is just the Taken on Io that are now serving him is questionable, but these Taken were originally here thanks to the Taken Vex mind called Quria, Blade Transform. Quiria's battle with Oryx spans several hundred years and can be found in the Books of Sorrow from the aforementioned entries of 38 through 44, ending with the Strict Proof Eternal entry. But to sum it up quickly, Oryx took Quria with his knowledge of Taken power in an attempt to better understand the Vex. He then gave this Vex mind to Savathun, his sister, in hopes that she could better understand the Vex for him, and in turn, still fulfill his worm's wants and purpose. Otherwise he wouldn't be so alive anymore. Granted, he is kind of dead now, but that's beside the point. Quria once again pops up on Io throughout the story mission of the post-Red War. Though we don't see Quria itself, we do see some enemies that are marked in service to the Taken Vex mind. This is specific to Mark, as we see those in service to the other Hive hierarchy, like that of Savathun, Oryx, and others. This leads me to believe that Quria was given enough power on its own. I'll read a section of Strict Proof Eternal to better explain what I mean. "I have a gift for you," says Oryx. Savathun, Witch Queen, looks at him with dry wariness. "Is it the sword logic I need to go into the deep and take your power for myself?" "It's a Vex I captured. Quria, Blade Transform. It made an attempt to puncture my throne. I thought you might enjoy studying it. Quria contains a Vex attempt to simulate me. It might generate others, you, perhaps, or Zivu Arath. I've left it some will of its own, so it can surprise you." That last part is the big piece. Oryx left Quria some will of its own to allow it a means to act on its own, and still give some accurate detailings of the Vex themselves for Savathun to consider. It also means it might have the ability to break away from Savathun and may be able to act on its own. Now that's a slightly scary thought in and of itself. Regardless, Quria has some means to act on its own. That's the big takeaway here. Back slightly on track, within the Whisper of the Worm lore entry, we see that the Taken are willing to shower Xol with tribute and attempt to make him into something greater. As Xol says, in death he fed richly. These Taken are looking for someone to help them, or at least to make it into a leader for them. They find this in Xol. The question is, who now is in control of the Taken on Io, which it would seem no one at least has been. I could see if this were on Titan, thanks to Saturn and the Dreadnought hanging overhead, but this isn't the case. Titan and Saturn are, at best, about 4.3 AUs apart, and that's if all the planets were aligned. And they're oftentimes not. Just saying. Even then, it sparks questions of who's in control of the ones on Earth as well. This doesn't even talk about the distance between Saturn and Jupiter and Mars, which is where Xol died. There's just so many pieces that aren't adding up with this location summary, at least. What does this massive tangent have to do with the Awoken in the Dreaming City? Well, Dreaming City happens to have a mashup of Fallen and Hive within it, and where there's Hive, there's oftentimes Taken. Especially when the Dreaming City goes all upside down, a la Stranger Things. Suddenly, here we are within an ascendant realm of the Hive, similar to that of the Dreadnought and Crota's on the moon back from Destiny 1. The question now is, whose throne world? With Taken and Hive infesting the Dreaming City, we can only speculate as to whom it may be. We do see a figure within the trailer covered over by 3 Hive Knights that are actually given the designate of Darkblade, or at least I assume. Could it be this figure, or someone else entirely? For those that played the Taken King and Strike mission The Sunless Cell, this title of Darkblade will sound familiar to you. Alakul the Darkblade was a foster son of Oryx, and it's unknown who was the sire of Alakul, though it is thought to be Crota. What if this is not the case, however? Seeing not one, but 3 Darkblades around a Hive wizard, and then seeing another on Titan within the public event with the Hive ritual, is it just a coincidence? The axe doesn't seem to be a common weapon for the Hive, or at least of the sword-pledged users of Oryx, though an offshoot of the sword, and still possibly falling into the logic of the Hive, that being sword logic, it may still be an acceptable weapon to use. It just seems too large a coincidence, and I start to see these larger axe knights being more common the further we dig into the possibilities of Savathun. Savathun the Cunning, sister of Oryx and Zivur Roth, the one who dove her war moons into a black hole and never to be heard from again within the Books of Sorrow. How far did she really go? How far did she push outside the universe, or at least to the galaxy? These are unknown elements within the lore at this point, but Warmind does hold a couple possible answers. In the adventure Deathly Tremors on Mars, we see Ghost find something a bit strange.
I got a fragment of the message. Savathun, emerge from the deep. Take our power.
These Hive are seemingly without guidance and are now in disarray now that Nokris and Zol have seemingly been slain, or at least taken out of the picture from Mars. Looking on the events of Warmind as they are, with the hints left on Io about Quria Blade Transform and the Taken, the last one in possession of Quria being Savathun, by the by, all signs point to her involvement. I've long thought that while Quria was more of a test subject for Oryx to better understand the Vex further, it was also a way for Savathun to bisect and understand the workings of the Taking by Oryx, the power of the deep. If Savathun has figured out a way to also work with and conform Taken, this might open up several doors. It may also be the reason this Hive brood on Mars is looking for her, as they know she's close and within our system. I mean, it's in her name, the Cunning. And all of this comes right back to the Dreaming City. The Awoken have been meddling in powers they and we do not fully understand, showcased with those that they keep within the Prison of Elders. 2 reports spring to mind, the first of the Taken Power experiments ran by the Teshiuns, Verix, and Petravenge shortly after the battle with Oryx, and the experiments ran on Psylocke, the defiled. Report Taken Power hosts a fair few issues with the Reef post-Oryx. Petra is being targeted for assassinations, the Teshiuns, or Tech Witches, aren't having any of it, and Verix is supplying the Reef with plenty of Taken experimentation subjects, aka trapping them in the Prison of Elders, which for a group that can move through walls and such sounds like it might be pretty hard to do, actually. Nice job, Verix. Want to share that little secret? Anyway, the Awoken are trying to harness this power, but to do it, they require the need of the Teshiuns. This falls back on one name in particular, which is Shuro Chi, whom used to be one of Queen Marasov's main coven members. Not jumping to any conclusions, of course, but the name is there, and it better explains this image of the Teshiun that we see within the new trailer. Shuro is also alive post-Oryx battle. That's important to note. We find that information out with one of the Telesto cards, just for reference. Regardless, the Awoken seem to be able to transfer Taken power using one of these Tech Witches, and this leads me to a theory. Just as Crota had opened a hole in Oryx Throne World, so too did this Teshiun open one within the Dreaming City, after being corrupted by the power of the Taking, especially with prolonged use of the power. Referring back to the Deathly Tremors mission, Anna reminds us, simply, what the Hive's powers are all about.
Nice work. I'll spend some time wrapping my head around all of this. It's Hive, so I'm sure it's going to be strange. But at its core, their magic is still just science. I'll get to the bottom of it.
This leads back to Psylocke's Grimoire card, where it outlines 2 Awoken that are conducting tests on the Taken Knight. There are a lot of things to unpack with this card, especially the ever-questioned term of the Nastareth and what it means, but the ultimate point to show here is Psylocke had the ability to mind-wipe these Awoken. They were in a constant loop of trying to probe the mind of Psylocke, and for this I have to ask the question: how far does this ability go for the Taken? If it could affect a Teshiun with prolonged exposure to the Taken's power, then this explains entirely what's happening here with this tech witch in the trailer. It could also just be another step on the long road of understanding. As a side note, the Taken power entry also refers back to constant screams and other troubles that come from harnessing this power. This doesn't seem to be a Psylocke-only thing. Regardless, the Dreaming City has ties back to older Grimoire card and stories, just like most of Forsaken and Warmind have seemed to open up the door to be. I figured I would give an overview of further knowledge and further relation back to what I feel are important facts to bring up to the city in general, especially with the limited information we still have. I'm sure we'll revisit it again. And on a final note that I just thought of, it's just kind of funny that Mara Sov and the Awoken refer back to it as the Dreaming City, and meanwhile we have the last safe city underneath the Traveler. I just wonder if there's some kind of relation there that I haven't thought of in full yet. Regardless, I know there are plenty of other theories that exist, and we still have to touch base on this immense creature that is at the heart of the Dreaming City, as Petra says. But this relies back to another theory, one that's been around for quite some time that I feel deserves a revisit, one that others think I'm just silly and have forgotten about. I need to ask you guys what you think of this theory, and what you think of these connections so far. Do you think I'm losing my mind, or do you feel like we're onto something here? What else can we uncover that's linked with these stories? The Hive always pose such interesting ones. I'll leave those additional connections for you to find for now, as I'll be waiting for more information and a chance to explore the Dreaming City for myself. To Guardians and non-Guardians alike, I'll see you next space time. Take care.